So again, I like to just grab these, take them, throw them back in. So these are our keywords, and now let's take a look and see what the recommendations are. Vintage designer clothing, relevant?
Yeah, could be.
Secondhand clothing, possibly. Designer clothing, probably too broad, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would just be we would never rank anywhere on that.
Discount designer clothing, possibly. Secondhand clothing stores. So when you see stores, the general assumption is a brick and mortar store, right? So it's probably not your market.
Yeah. The secondhand clothing online or something, that would be
right. Right. Designer vintage clothing. It's relevant to a degree, but
it's kind of the other one in different order. Does that matter? Vintage designer clothing, designer vintage clothing.
Right. No, I mean, we can. Both of these, vintage designer clothing and designer vintage clothing, are probably the secondhand element isn't there, so that might throw people off.
They might be thinking more like really expensive eBay type items.
Right.
Maybe.
So everything on ThreadFlip is used. Is that right?
No.
Not everything.
Not everything.
Okay.
Some of it's also crafty, like people, like one girl does prints on, on like American Apparel shirts. So it maybe like it has more of a vibe of like one-off items or unique items, some of which are designer or vintage, some of which are just people make them themselves.
Okay. Okay, so let's collect a bunch of these, and when you're, especially during your first round of keyword research, it's okay to go really broad and then tighten up later, right? So designer vintage clothing, $74,000 a month is probably too much, right? Designer clothes on sale, probably not, right? Designer wholesale clothing, designer clothes discount, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Used clothing's probably too broad, but we can keep it for now. Cheap designer clothes?
Could be. Retro clothing's interesting. That's a word I hadn't thought to use, but could describe a lot of stuff on the site.
There you go. Okay, where's retro? Oh, there it is. Retro. Yeah, and this is it's a really good tactic to just sort of play around, and you get a lot of ideas for phrases to use. Designer clothes cheap. Designer clothing online. Secondhand designer clothes. Designer clothing discount, maybe. Used clothing online. Interesting one. Cheap designer clothing. Designer discount clothes. Used clothes for sale. Clothing store. And again, this is because your site's kind of unique in that it's a real heavy social play. Not a lot of these might be as relevant, but we'll still go through this process. And sometimes it can be good to inspire different landing page ideas or different pieces of content, right? So, this kind of list can inspire new blog posts for you, different ways to think about.
Well, we have different features, for example. So we feature different things regularly. I don't know how that would work. They would probably be only up for 1 or 2 weeks, but I assume that's enough time to temporarily get a ranking if people were searching it or not. How soon does stuff go through Google?
It really depends. Usually you can get stuff indexed. I mean, I've had websites get indexed in 12 hours, but sometimes it can take up to a week or two. It really depends.
I don't imagine if you only have something up for a few weeks, so it would really be super high up in their chart, because you're not really looking to do that stuff like longer term, right? I guess that's kind of a problem with the commerce aspect of it in general, is sometimes you have stuff and then it sells, and so it's not as if you have these like really long-term permanent pages that you can just kind of optimize for.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes we have sometimes we'll have some like designer bag or something, and then maybe if someone was searching it, they would like that, but then we won't have it in like 2 weeks.
Right. It's actually a similar problem to what eBay has. If you think about eBay, every 30 days, eBay has an entirely different inventory.
Right.
right? And so it's a very tough SEO challenge. So the answer there has been to create product pages. They create these pages that last permanently,
Okay.
right? So, for example, when the new 16 gigabyte iPhone comes out or whatever, rather than trying to optimize these auction pages that are constantly turning over, they create a permanent page that never moves. It's a little bit tougher for you because you have individual products that you sell and they go away, you sell and they go away. But you should consider permanent pages.
Well, particularly there are some users who make stuff who do keep things permanently. So even if it might not work for, 75% of the items on the site, but maybe if we had permanent pages for 25% of the items, at least those could get indexed and provide some sort of traffic.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure.
So.
And when you go about doing those permanent pages, you may want to try and consider a more SEO-friendly URL structure. So rather than doing it under the framework you currently have, doing threadflip.com/cheap designer clothing, right? Threadflip.com/secondhand designer clothes, or whatever keywords you pick, right? Okay, so we got a bunch of these. So let's grab them one more time, and we are almost done. We have 58 of them. So again, we plug it in. We hit search. And the tool shows us again everything we typed in here. We can sort by volume. And then it'll give us an additional 100 keywords to work with. So I'll export this now to Excel. We could do this for 100 more years. We could finish now. But that's the process. So we download this. So we have our keyword ideas. We open it up. Right, and I like to take the competition and delete that. Take the global and delete that. And then I have my keywords and my monthly search volume. I usually filter and filter largest to smallest. And then I have my priority. Save as. ThreadFlip keyword research. And save. And that's it.